Okay, great. My name is Nathan Dormer. I'm a Vice President of Research and Development at Orbis Biosciences. It's a small pharmaceutical startup based out of Kansas City. I'm going to be your moderator today. We have three lovely panelists that are going to share some of their experiences with you as being graduates of BME programs and getting jobs in the field. I'm part of the same track, so I'll share maybe a few minutes of my story. I started off as a chemical engineer by training in undergrad and went into a PhD program in bioengineering at KU. I was fortunate enough that it was the first year KU had their BioE program, so the track was a little bit nebulous. I had the opportunity to kind of form my own graduate education. I took classes from all sorts of different departments, mathematics, engineering, biology, took a lot of immunology and drug delivery classes out of the pharmaceutical chemistry school, basically formed an amalgamation of a thesis that had to do with tissue engineering by differentiating stem cells from growth factors that are being released from microparticles in an in vivo implant. So if you can picture making microspheres, there's a drug delivery component to that, encapsulating BMP2 and TGF-beta to differentiate stem cells, and then putting all those particles together into a mold, and then putting it in a knee defect in the hopes that they'll release growth factors to differentiate the local stem cells into cartilage and bone in the same space. That's what my thesis was all about. So I think that BME is a really neat intersection of science and engineering, and I know that all of you have each one of you probably have a unique background that may be similar to that or maybe dissimilar, but the commonality is that BME is a field that joins a lot of different sciences to solve some very difficult problems that are in the world today. So I appreciate you coming out today and coming to learn about what our wonderful speakers have to say about transitioning from BME and taking the knowledge they've gained and making a successful career out of that to make an impact in people's lives. So thank you. First up, I think, Audrey, you want to come first?
I'm just going to set this right over here.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Do I need to
Yeah,
start?
yeah, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Audrey Minks. I'm a program engineer at PMC Smart Solutions, which is a plastic injection molding company specializing in medical devices. I graduated from Rose-Hulman in 2014 in biomedical engineering with a biomechanics track, so a little bit away from the tissue engineering like Nate does. So I took a lot of classes in orthopedics and different biomechanics tracks and all that. But I really found my niche when I started working with the joint replacement surgeons in Indiana with one of my professors. And we did a lot of research with orthopedic implants, a lot of hips. I was able to get a lot of experience working with CAD design software, designing testing fixtures, and then also walking down the hall and building those fixtures in the machine shop with some of my coworkers. So a lot of awesome experience in that. After Rose-Hulman, I went to Grace College in Warsaw, Indiana, got my master's in orthopedic regulatory and clinical affairs, and I interned with Zimmer in their clinical affairs department. My thoughts on that was basically if I wanted to work in orthopedics and medical devices, that I really needed to get a good understanding about the regulations that the FDA required to get these devices into market. So then I started where I am today, and today I work a lot with manufacturing engineers, the quality department, and also with the program management. So all of the experiences from my past really helped me today to succeed in my position, but yeah, we'll get into that later, I guess. I'm not going to try.
Thank you, Audrey. Alec?
Hi all. I'm Alec Cerchiari. I did my undergraduate at Boston University in biomedical engineering. I then worked a couple of years in a startup in biofuels in Boston, and then went back for my doctorate degree at the UC Berkeley UCSF graduate program in bioengineering. I did there 4 or 5 years, continue with a short postdoc there, and I kind of focus mostly on coding, surface chemistry, a little bit of tissue engineering, but probably not as much, but mostly surface coding and chemistry. And then I applied for medical device companies, many, got very few interviews, and then after that I kind of focused on the best match, which was at Cook Medical in Bloomington, Indiana, and moved from California to Indiana, and there I focus again on coatings for catheters or balloons or stents, so more coatings. That's pretty much it. Thanks.
Chris?
Let's see. Thanks, Nate. So my name is Chris Basciano. Wow, there's a lot of people in here. I'm a staff engineer at BD. I'm in a different site than where Nate is at. I'm actually on the East Coast at Research Triangle Park, North Carolina. I did biomedical engineering as my undergraduate degree at Mercer University. It's in Macon, Georgia, about 70 miles southeast of Atlanta. I then did my graduate degree and master's and my PhD in mechanical engineering at North Carolina State University. And I did a lot of computational modeling and simulation. So I did arterial flows and abdominal aortic aneurysms. And then I also did therapeutic particle transport and for liver oncology treatments. And then I also analyzed and developed models for the arterial wall of nonlinear structural dynamics and mechanics. So there's kind of a blend of solid mechanics and fluid dynamics within my background. Right after grad school, I was looking for jobs, and my story a little bit is maybe a little different. I was looking around, and my wife had a really great job in Research Triangle Park, and we were like, I don't know if we really want to move. So we ended up staying, and I took a job at a contract research firm called Applied Research Associates, who did 0 biomedical work. And I worked there for about 2.5 years. And while I was there, I mentioned they're a contract research firm, so they gave me the freedom to bring in contracts and go after contracts. So I went and I brought in biomedical related contracts that were related to my graduate work that I was able to continue there. And while I was there, BD had an opening, and they contacted me and said, there's a really good match between your skill set and what we need. Would you consider applying? And I said yes, and it has been an excellent fit. It's amazing, where I get to now do computer modeling and simulation for all of BD. So.
Thank you to our panelists. Oh, here's your name tag.
Thanks.
So I'm curious to know from each one of you, within your own companies and the roles you currently have, what sort of skill sets would somebody in your position need to get a job similar to what you're doing? Are PhDs required? Are there master's levels? Talk a little bit about the experience, the position you're in now, and what you would have to matriculate to such a position.
Well, I work in a manufacturing facility, so no PhD, sorry. But we definitely look for people who have a very focused skill set more in the mechanical sense. We're looking for people like more biomechanical, maybe, with maybe people who want to do more of a program management type of skill set. People who can look at different projects, because we are contract, work with suppliers, organize a project, have an idea of what it means, to actually look at a mold and the plastic resin that is required for the part, and be able to talk to that type of experience.
You guys can use the microphone too.
Yeah, sure. In the context at Cook Medical, I think, I'm not sure, but I believe that if you come in with a PhD, you probably, so let's say maybe that if you don't come in with a PhD to cover the same position on the research team, you would probably need a comparable maybe 4 or 5 years of work experience. So I personally think it would make things easier, but I'm not sure, because on our team there's also a lot of other people that don't have doctorate trainings, but they all have definitely more experience in industry than I have.
So my group in BD is very, very focused, and there's a deep technical skill set that my team often wants. So for us, a master's degree or a sufficient amount of experience doing computer modeling and simulation, and at much more than at an advanced level. So Simuli is not here, right, or DS isn't here. So SolidWorks FEA, finite element analysis is not enough. You'll need to know, for my group, you'll need to know a deeper knowledge of advanced finite element codes such as Abacus. When SolidWorks Flow is not enough, you'll need to know advanced CFD software such as ANSYS Fluent or Star CCM+. So computer programming doesn't hurt either. Like if you have computer programming experience, that is also very helpful.
Now, each one of you told a little bit about kind of how you found your first job. What kind of advice would you give to the audience about, the strategic effort it takes to land that job? And sometimes we walk into good opportunities, but the opportunities that you have to go and search for, what are some of the resources you use to land your first gig, or some offers you received during that time?
Yeah, I know. All right, I'll start here. Wow, all right. Let me think back. So there's a lot of steps along the way that I took. First off, I'm going to openly just admit it. It's not easy. Okay, it wasn't easy to go, and it took work. A professor who he kind of was the advisor for my undergrad senior design course, and he said, okay, so there's this other class that you're going to be taking now, and you don't get credit for it, but it's going to take a lot of work, about as much work as all of your other classes combined. It's called finding a job. And he was right. It took a lot of effort. The resources I used stemmed a lot around the resources. I tried to take advantage of whichever university I was at, what the Career Resources Center had. I would make sure that I would go talk to their counselors to have resume reviews. I would attend every career fair that university had. And even that, the first ones I didn't have any offers for, I would do internships as an undergrad whenever I could. In the summer times, and they weren't always for biomedical companies. One of the most successful and most impactful internships I had was in the middle of nowhere in Georgia at a place called Imerys was the company, and there's this special type of white powder called kaolin, and it absorbs ink on paper really well. But it's a lot of particulates like blood, actually. And so it was my initiation to advanced CFD and industry, and it was I was like a fish on a hook. So.
Thanks. I personally think, I don't know, it depends. Everybody has different constraints of what they find important or not. And for me, it was a lot easier once I decided to open to any geographical location and relocating anywhere. So I initially started by looking focused on the Bay Area, and then decided to just do not have any geographical constraints and just finding the best match for my background, and that made things a lot easier, I think.
I rely heavily on my alma mater, basically not just the school website, which I found my current position at on the career webpage at Rose-Hulman's website, but also the students that I graduated with. I've had so many times when I found a job that I wanted, and I would just send them my resume and be like, hey, could you push this along to somebody or someone else that maybe you could, help me out? But on top of that, LinkedIn is also a very handy tool. If you can mark, there's different tools on there that you can mark that you're looking for something, and then recruiters can, type in a keyword or maybe a position, and your name will pop up. I mean, if it's that easy for you, congratulations. But I mean, it's just another tool that you can use to just put yourself out there, put out your face, put out your name, and get your resume to as many people as you can.
I would say, to echo Alex's point, a lot of the big biomedical or medical device companies, they have geographic locations that host or hold their technical area of specialization. So, like for instance, there are companies like Edwards Life Sciences where there are a lot of their focus areas for their stuff is on the West Coast, and that's where their focus areas are. Like if you like orthopedic work, Indiana is like a hub of like tons of implants and tons of orthopedic companies. And so if you really, really are passionate about a particular application area, keeping your geographic location flexible opens a lot of doors.
Yeah, that's good. So when you're honing your resume and your skill set and your training, what are some of the skills maybe that each one of your positions values that maybe somebody even within your same company, they wouldn't have to have that sort of skill set? Are there some special requisites for people in each one of your positions that kids would have to think about before they graduate, acquiring those skill sets? I know we talked a little bit about programming, so
Yeah.
that's a great example,
okay.
knowing a programming language, something along those lines.
Sure. I think it's also dependent on kind of the positions that come up because, for instance, I feel I was very lucky in the position I'm covering now was just after someone moved to another position that was doing the same exact process of like looking at codings. But for instance, a new position just opened up like a few months ago, and who came was an animal expert. Jill just did her PhD in biology, but it was focused on animal work, and the opening was kind of specific to that particular skill of animal work, and so it's kind of also depending on what and I think it's hard to predict sometimes. Maybe, I don't know, there kind of flexibility also in kind of adapting your curriculum or your CV to kind of match that. Oh yeah, of course I know how to do that, sure. Or to a certain extent, bending it, I mean, within reason.
So I would say two things that often get labeled as soft skills, but are extremely valuable for people in my roles. One is communication. So part of my role is that I have to explain fluid dynamics results or solid mechanics results to a project manager or to a vice president of R&D who may or may not have that same level of technical experience, but I have to tell them and show them why that technical information matters, and then how are they going to use that to further their product development. So that ability to communicate is critical for each engineer on our team, that they are placed in those roles where they have to interface with people across the company. And then the second thing is being able to learn and apply new things. Learning doesn't stop just because you're out of school. And that was tough for me to accept at first, to be honest, because it was like this bombshell that went off. I was like, right, I'm still going to be in class all the time? Yeah, you are. I would say continue to learn and continue to be willing to apply new skills, and that will keep you current and also differentiate yourself within whatever companies you end up with or whatever organizations you end up in.
Going back to project management, Gantt charts, being able to, focus resources where they need to go, as well as time. management and such, but also CAD design is super important, not only just for mold design and mold flow, but also for fixtures. In metrology lab, we use a lot of fixtures to hold our parts in place to ensure that we get the same measurement method every time, that everything is, within good quality and capability. So definitely something like that. But going back to the soft skills as well, I think people who, like Chris was saying, just having an open mind and willing to say yes to things maybe that you haven't tried before is very important. When I went into this job for the first time, I had never stepped foot in a metrology lab. I had very limited knowledge of GD&T, but now I can say that I am the gauge R&R queen of my organization. So if I hadn't stepped up and said yes, I wouldn't, have that knowledge base.
Great. So within each one of your organizations, what are some of the more specific roles a BME could play? I know within a certain company, you have project managers, you have people in R&D, people in manufacturing, people on the regulatory side. All of those people technically could have BME backgrounds, but within each one of your companies, what sort of roles are there that students could take when they're coming out of school as a BME graduate?
I'm not sure I'm understanding completely that question, but I'll kind of respond two ways in what I think I am interpreting that question. Well, first of all, how I think BMES could help in kind of allocating and finding jobs in industry is by kind of making it visible through the society. Look, if you're in orthopedics, these are all the orthopedics companies that are in the US or elsewhere. If you're in the cardiovascular space, these are the type of companies that are operating in that space, and kind of subdividing the industries into buckets, and kind of so a student or someone that is specializing in that particular, let's say orthopedics, will be can go for, or cardiovascular, which is kind of in the space that mostly Cook Medical is in. You have Medtronic, Boston Scientific, and a series of other companies that you can kind of allocate, and it will make the work of applying, I think, easier, because you can. It's not necessarily trivial, because you think medical device company, but everyone is kind of different. So I think that would help. And then the second part of the question, which I think was kind of what roles. I mean, I am not too sure. At Cook Medical, I think they hire a lot from Indiana colleges, so Rose-Hulman and Purdue University are the major engineering hubs there. So most of the people there are from these two schools. And I think there's a lot of alumni relationships, so definitely the networking possibilities there would be very helpful. They do a lot of internships and co-ops for undergrads, and I don't know, not so much for master students or doctoral students.
So BD is a really big company. With their recent acquisition of CareFusion, there's 45,000 employees around the world. So BMEs can have multiple roles within BD, but it comes down to what things really excited you within your BME curriculum, and then looking for those same opportunities within the company. And that goes to looking at position descriptions on their careers webpage, that goes into LinkedIn, seeking out either alumni from your university, where are they at, finding ways to connect with people who have similar interests as you within the company. So, for instance, in my BME program, I took biofluids classes and advanced biofluids classes as an undergrad, and so that was an area that I knew I had a natural interest in, and I just really liked it, and I would continue to invest in that and look for those opportunities with those kind of keywords in search engines or whatnot, and whether it's LinkedIn or on the company's careers webpage. If you like project management, I know BD has project manager positions or program manager positions. If you like wet lab work, I know BD has wet lab work. So, and I would imagine a company as large as Medtronic as well has lots of different opportunities, but it comes down to matching your interest and your technical depth or your skill set depth to the position that is open or that they have.
Great.
I would add to that one thing I personally find useful is not only through LinkedIn, but also Glassdoor. When they come, they kind of put your keywords of like things you're interested in, or your dream job, and then it kind of sends you emails when they're postings and opening of that. And most of the time you're not qualified for it, but you kind of see from the requirements what you would need to kind of get to that position, which I find useful and try to kind of build towards getting there.
Indeed is also helpful.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Oh, I should take notes.
Since my company's super small, I'm pretty sure if Biomed wanted to walk in and do anything, they would be allowed. So, with that kind of skill set, with just knowing what parts are necessary for, a lot of times we have tooling engineers that don't actually understand what these parts are being used for. And so it's kind of easy to get lost in translation when you're producing these parts. But one position that I think that biomeds would be super at would be sales. Because we are such a close-knit group and networking is so great, if you're in a sales position and you are very closely tied with BMES or any other kind of biomedical society, you can go out there and find sales and actually make a difference for your company doing that type of thing. So.
Not to mention that it's, especially in pharmaceutics, at least based on my experience, it's really important that your sales team can walk the walk when it comes to the science. So some of the best pharmaceutical sales reps I've seen are PhD graduates out of BME programs that really know the drugs inside and out. They know what they're selling. They know what the capability is, and those people make great sales teams. So you don't want to rule out a career in business, if you will, combined with an MBA or some sort of other training to be on the sales force for a major organization. It's a very fulfilling role. Well, I think that I know you guys are itching to ask some questions, probably some very targeted questions. So we're going to open it up to the audience to ask a few. I do want to remind you kindly, if you have a question, to please use one of the microphones on either side so everybody can hear your question and the answer too. Everybody knows what they're going to do when they graduate. It's amazing.
Okay, I'm too short, but my name is Anastasia, and I'm a senior at University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I've had some internships actually at BD at a manufacturing plant. So how would you recommend to translate from being at a plant to like translating it to being at headquarters or more in your roles?
Let's see, Nebraska. So did you go to Columbus, or did you go to Holdridge, or Broken Bow?
Broken Bow.
Okay, cool. So first off, this is for everyone. Manufacturing to headquarters is vastly important. So it's a valuable knowledge base that you have. Does that mean that there's a position already created for you, waiting for you there? That's a bit more tricky. The BD headquarters is in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey, and they do a lot of research and development in there for product development. However, manufacturing feasibility is a requirement for that R&D work. So that internship experience is valuable. In fact, they sometimes send, one of my first trips at BD was to go visit Columbus and Holdridge manufacturing sites. So I would say the way that I would put that, just highlight it on your resume when you apply, and then find roles that are oriented to product development, where they're trying to turn concepts into products, and that's when that manufacturing experience and exposure will be most helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. I'm Adam Smolder from the University of Pittsburgh. Currently, I'm a junior undergraduate, and I wanted to ask, it seems like for most of you guys, you didn't really find a job in what you wanted to do until like after you got a job after graduation, or it wasn't like an immediate thing. So for other undergraduates or people who are coming out of grad school starting to try to get into industry, do you think that we should be very directed already in what we want to do and just shoot the moon for what we want? Or do you think it's better to try and find a job in generally kind of what you're looking for and then work into the position you really want to go to?
Oh, that's a great question. Does anybody want to take that first?
Well, I can speak from experience that I'm in my first job that, like you said, that I didn't see myself going into. And even though I never saw myself in manufacturing, I definitely appreciate the experiences that I have gotten from this position, and I'm hoping that with these fundamental building blocks that I'll be in a better position when I figure out what that job is that I even want to do, that I can reach for it and actually succeed. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Chris already, I'm going to steal Chris's answers, which I think is like your first job might not be your ideal target, but I mean, you can do your best to build towards that.
And I would answer yes to what your answers are. Is I would pursue both if you can at the same time. Like try to, like Alec mentioned, that he tried to go after exactly what he wanted and see if it's possible in the area that you want or in the geographic location that you want. Know those things that you're kind of most interested in. Try to think about that, and then if it's not, maybe that's not possible, and then you kind of move on to the next opportunity or find the next opportunities from there that would work out, and just kind of keep going. My first job, I found and knew of people that back in grad school that worked at that contract research firm, and then continued to see them at career fairs that recruited master's and PhD students. And then they also did a lot of computer code development and project management. And it gave me invaluable experience there that I carry with me to all of my other jobs that I'll have.
Yeah, that's great. That's great insight. To add on to what Chris said, I think that it really depends on what type of person you are. If you're okay with a little bit of ambiguity and you're okay with trying new things, I'd say that use your engineering schools, make the very best educated guess you can about what you want to do when you get out, and try it. And if it's not what makes you happy and it's not what excites you every day, and you're not jumping to go to work every day, and you really dislike it, start over. Don't just quit your job.
Right.
But formulate a plan and say, this is where I think I want to be based on my training and the first job I've had or the first and second job I had, and work on getting there. Use your resources like LinkedIn and networking and meetings like this to basically pull yourself towards that opportunity.
Cool. Thank you guys so much.
Hello. I actually have two questions. The first is if any of you considered a career in academia before you moved into industry. And the second is, besides technical skills, what personal, I guess, skills would you say are most important for your positions in industry?
Yeah, say so. Let's see here. I did consider a career in academia for a time, and let's see, trying to not. Yeah. Okay. So the reality is, I just got burnt out, like with the academic timetable, with waiting too long to do something, with not seeing my results impact someone. It was like I was always asked to do a cool new simulation per se for the sake of doing a cool new simulation that would look cool on the website, and that was where it would stop. And I was like, well, I want to do more than that. And so for me personally, I just made a decision that, and with the way my advisor ran his research group, I was not going to get career fulfillment for myself if I stayed in that environment. And so that's what pushed me to industry. People skills, or I guess non-technical skills, being approachable is really good for our roles. Part of that is because we are we are a people-oriented, people-interactive group where we constantly have to present and work with many, many, many different types of personalities. Part of working for a big company is that there'll be a plethora of different people that work there. And so you can meet some very, very driven type A people on one project, and then the next project they'll be really, you know, West Coast California cool, no problems, just chilling kind of thing. And they all work for the same company, and my role and my responsibility is to do whatever I can to help support each of those projects move forward faster, better, with an improved design.
All right, I'll be open with you, and I'm not going to sign this form, so so I can be a kind of open as much as I can. And I personally would have loved to have a job in academia. I think is like professionally the best. You're like using taxpayers' money to define what are the important questions as a society we have to answer. Is a fantastic job. And if you get tenure, you can't get fired neither. That's fantastic. But as well, like the timeline and the kind of investment that you have to do, especially after maybe you already sacrificed your entire youth doing a PhD, and now you have to, I mean, it's the truth. It's like the number of PhDs is growing exponentially while the number of universities is remaining constant. So the postdocs get longer and longer, and the qualifications get so demanding that you don't want to do 6 or 7 years of postdoc and then maybe start another postdoc to have a fighting chance to get that kind of dream job. If you're and it kind of became a game of persistence, and I miss it a lot. I love because, I mean, to the credit of academia, it gives you a creativity and the intellectual freedom that I think no other job would give you. But I'll say this, which I just learned in my role doing research in industry, which I feel in industry, actually science has become more objective than in academia, because the experiment, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. In particular, in a medical device company, if it doesn't work, you don't get FDA approval, so it's pretty easy. Well, a lot in academia, you bang your head against the wall for maybe 5-6 years to get the experiment working, and it must work because the hypothesis must be correct. So I feel like almost to do science and in a more, it's counterintuitive. It became a little more objective and more kind of better science in industry, I think. I mean, again, I don't want this to go on recording, but that's my take.
To be honest, I probably never seriously considered academia as my career goal. I definitely saw myself out more in the real world. Sorry. I didn't mean it like that. I didn't mean it like that. But so yeah, I'm happy to be in industry. Do I wish if I could have gone back for maybe my master's in engineering? Most definitely. But there's still time for that. I'm still considered a early career person. Speaking to the soft skills that you were asking about, also self-awareness. Recognizing what you can offer to your team and the different projects that you're in, but also recognizing when it's time to listen and to grow in your early career. So.
Thank you.
Great.
Hello, thank you for your time today. My question is for finding a job for someone who may be moving around the country every 3 to 4 years. What jobs in industry would be a good fit for that outside of, say, sales?
To clarify your question, all right, when you say moving around every 3 to 5 years, do you mean previously, or in the future you want to move every 3 to 5 years?
Like in the future, you may be required to move every 3 to 5 years.
Okay, well it depends. So you're asking you want a position like that, or are you saying because like at my group in North Carolina, we don't move around. Like once you get there, if you want to, you can potentially move to like Franklin Lakes if you want to, but that requires you to like switch groups, switch business units. Essentially, they have to open up a position for you there. It's doable if you want that, but it's not required. If you want that, a lot of the big companies have these early career talent development programs, and if you're really interested in them, I would encourage you to apply. BD has one called the TLDP, Technology Leadership Development Program. It's 18 months, and you do like 9-month rotations at different sites around BD. So you can go to California, stay there for 9 months, and then go to Franklin Lakes and stay there for 9 months, and then go to another. If you were interested in instrumentation, you can go to Sparks, Maryland. You can go to Massachusetts. So those are options that are available. I'm pretty sure Medtronic has a similar talent development program or whatnot. It's like Alex said, though, while you're in that program, if you might feel like you're not able to start the rest of your life yet. So there's a choice that you kind of have to make of what do you want out of your career and what do you want out of your maybe non-professional life as well.
I'm not sure what to add to that. I don't think, as you say, the larger, generally, then I don't know if it's true or not, but I would assume that the bigger and larger the company, the more flexibility there would be for internal postings and relocation in different geographical locations. And I think if you are open to that, and I'm not sure if what I'm saying is correct or not, but if you're open to that, that would be valued as well, because you stay within the company and you can move around. And I would think that large international corporations would appreciate your flexibility if you were open to moving around every 2-3 years in different teams and different locations.
I don't really have much to add. Are you saying that you want to stay within the same company and move? Or are you just saying like a type of job which you can stop in one company and go find another job in a different company in a different location?
Similar to that, more of would a company be tolerant of someone needing to move around the country throughout the years?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, maybe that's, I don't know, for whatever reason, personal reasons, family reasons, whatever it is. I think the easier, like the larger the company, the easier it would be, because their positions,
right? Because their positions available. I'll tell you this: that you will have to earn that flexibility. That will not be given to you on day one, or in your first position with the company. You will have to demonstrate to your first team and to other teams. You'll have to make connections, because when you leave your first team, whatever position it is, you probably won't be part of that same team when you go to another site. You'll have to be part of a new group, new job position, new job roles. All possible, all doable. Much easier to do at a larger company, but you'll have to earn that flexibility, is what I would say.
Yeah, that's a great point, Chris. I do want to add, though, if you could also consider a career being a consultant. So there are a lot of consultant firms out there for biomedical product development. In pharma, it's huge. We have consultants, and every time we have a phone call, you can hear their dogs barking in the background, because that's all these guys do. And they can charge a pretty decent rate if you know what you're talking about. So that's something that you may want to consider. And it may require a few years in industry to get that experience under your belt till you can basically command that kind of respect, and then you can go join a firm or start one up yourself.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Zhenan from University of Illinois. This is my 5th year PhD. I have 2 questions. First one is a little bit more general, maybe to all of you. If you have ever worked with newly joined PhD graduates, what type of skills you think they need to improve the most, or to say the weakness that distinguish them from experienced workers? Any suggestion for the current about to graduate PhDs? Anything you think they can be prepared before they join the company? And the second question is more specific. It happened to me right now, I think. if you're facing two similar type of job offer from a headquarters which is located in a very rural area, compared with a regional center in a big city, is there any like hidden secrets behind those? I just skipped the name of the company, but it's like a global, very huge companies. Anything you think, any suggestions when you compare with, go to the local regional ones or go to the headquarters ones? Thanks.
Oh, you can go ahead.
So the first question regarding like PhD, like make sure I understood it right. Any recommendations for new PhDs, like after they join?
Right, and
Okay.
even they are qualified and they
Right.
already had a job offer, but what type of things you think need to be
Right,
improved?
yeah. So part of that, I would mention something Audrey said, is to be flexible and be open when you first get hired. Even as a PhD, you come in with a wealth of knowledge, but realize that company has existed and is doing, hopefully that company is doing very well without you. And so you are going to offer something, but check your ego at the door a little bit. That company is doing all right without you. So be willing to learn again when you go there. Realize that there might actually be someone who only has a bachelor's degree, but has worked at that company for 2 decades and commands the respect of every technical person within that room. And you should give them that respect too if you want to have an impact for yourself. Other things I would recommend are a little bit more detailed. So my lab in when I was in graduate school, they did not keep like a calendar or a meeting sheet or whatnot. And at my new role, we use Outlook calendar like daily. We live and die by that. When Outlook's down, everyone gets like tense and frustrated, like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So how you go about your daily job will change a bit once from your PhD day to day and whatever schedule or ritual you have to when you go work at a company. For your second question, that's also open-ended regarding you want the rural site or whether you want that's at the headquarters or large number of employees there, or whether you want the satellite office in a more populated area. A lot of that comes down to what you really like and what you want. Trying to think if there's Nate, you might want to think of this if if there's an easier way, if you choose one and want to switch, if there's an easier way to switch. I'm trying to think.
When you're in school?
No, he's placed with have two job opportunities at the same company. One is in a rural site, but it's like a larger company site, and then the rural site or the satellite office is in a really populated metro area. Is there a way, if you choose one, is there a way to and you find you don't like it, that it's easier to switch to the other one?
That's a good question. Well, our company only has one site, but I think that the way it works in our industry, for the way I understand it, is that if you can, when you decide that you want to move, if you can communicate that, one, to your direct manager, that it would be more convenient for you for personal reasons, or if you'd like to move to a different site, that will start the train essentially of, assuming you're on good relationship with them, that they'll start to look out for you. And if there are positions that open up, getting to a new position within that company internally is something that is not unheard of. So I would just encourage you to be open with your management, and if it's a new job offer, to bring that up in negotiation. Say, I noticed you have a similar site, maybe with a similar role description. Would you entertain me taking a job at the other site? That's something that's acceptable to discuss as well.
Again, I don't want this to be recorded, so I'll tell you what I think. The political correct answer that Chris gave you is the correct one, that you should choose based on your preferences. I personally think it would always be better to be towards the headquarters and the central location. It's kind of, you want to be close to the heart, not in the periphery and the toes. That's my 50 cents. Could be completely wrong. And in terms of, to reiterate the kind of things that change from graduate school as well, that other than Outlook and the calendar as well as the goals, I think that's kind of the biggest one. And there are certain goals that you have to accomplish by the end of the year, and your evaluation and performance depends on you meeting those goals. Which I personally did not have in graduate school. It was kind of more of a Wild West of trying to get something meaningful done. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Sorry. Yep. Let's do this side, and then we'll go back here.
Hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriel Gonzalez. I go to Mercer University, getting my degree in BME. Go Bears. So, any of you all were interested in working outside of the United States? And if you were, or even if you weren't, do you have any experience looking for jobs outside of the U.S.? If not, it's okay.
Yes, I'll tell you that. I am actually originally, I lived most of my life I'm from Milan, Italy. Mm-hmm. And I personally would love to go back to Italy. It's just in the economical context, it is not as, the job opportunity is not as appealing as in the United States. I think it's that easy. And I think it's an order of magnitude harder to find a job in Europe, especially Southern Europe, like those Mediterraneans over there. It's a disaster. But maybe in Northern Europe, for instance, it's a little easier. I have no idea in South America how the job market is.
I have not looked international. I can tell you it'll kind of depend on whether you want to look for a full-time position at a company, or whether or not you want to join an international research group for graduate school or something like that. So that I mean, it kind of depends on what your next career option you want to consider. So there are there are opportunities for that, and then different companies are more international. BD is one that does have a lot of sites around the world in different countries, and each site will specialize in kind of a unique area that they kind of hone a specific skill in.
Right. Yeah, it's really common in pharmaceuticals, at least, to be with a company, and particularly those companies that are synthesizing new compounds and APIs for treating diseases. They'll have sites overseas in a lot of different companies that come up with the intermediates, essentially. And if you were part of a pharmaceutical team here in the U.S., you may spend quite a bit of time overseas at those manufacturing sites, seeing that things go as planned, especially if you're in the chemical development type field. And a lot of the major biomed and pharma companies have sites and partner sites overseas, so you may, depending on the position you matriculate to, you may have the opportunity to actually travel quite a bit.
All right, thank you.
So I'm a second-year PhD student. So I was wondering what's, for you PhDs that ended up in industry, what's something that you guys are really glad that you guys did during your PhD studies that helped you in industry, and what's something you guys regret not doing while studying, as it relates to eventually getting a job?
Go for it.
No. Okay. I mean, good thing, of course. I think the most important thing I gained was the technical knowledge to be able to do what I do today. I think that's very valuable, and I don't think I would have that if I wouldn't have invested the time and the sweat to do that. I think that is valuable. So I don't regret that. things I wish I would have done is probably, I don't know, have a different philosophy and be more, enjoy a little more, because I think it becomes more stressful, I think, afterwards. At least I'm talking out of experience. Again, I might be wrong. That's my 50 cents. I think I was stressed for no reason in graduate school, and I think it's more stressful once you're actually in a job that evaluates at the end of the year and you have to meet those goals. And I realize that right now, so I wish I took it a little more easy and maybe didn't get those extra papers done and kind of took a little more vacation and enjoyed a little more.
So for me, we'll go with the technical skill set as one that I richly enjoy. I'm very, very fortunate that when I wake up in the morning, I'm ready to go to work. I want to go do what I do. It thrills me to be able to do that. That's not everyone's story, and that's not everyone's story that goes to graduate school. So for me, the skill set was that. One of the other things I really liked were twofold. There was another professor that told me to make sure that you add a personal element to your research that is more than what your advisor is asking you to do. Make sure it's something that you're interested in, that you can own, that is your own contribution to your work, that's above and beyond what your advisor tells you to do. And that, for me, that meant, it didn't mean that I had to put out a whole new paper on it. It was just like, I put a lot more effort in describing how I did things in the lab, not just what I did, and not just focusing on, well, I did these results. And that has helped me communicate in my job now why certain results are worth believing, or what are the results that are worth focusing on, and can I let go. Things I wish I would have done differently. My graduate school experience was pretty pressure-filled. My advisor was more let's say here's an example. Yeah, he would get up and regularly be in his office on Saturday morning. There were times that he expected his students to be there too. So I wish I would have found ways to enjoy the time a little bit more, but that might have been like by finding other student organizations that that would be, I guess, enriching, if you would say. So maybe something, it might be like another language, to learn another language, because I don't know another language very well now. It might be something like doing a design for the developing world-like class that's related to your engineering, or Engineers Without Borders is a similar organization. I would think of maybe like another enriching activity that I would have considered in grad school.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
had lab meetings at 7 p.m. on Wednesdays. They got moved throughout the years because we were complaining to 6, and then we settled at 5:30. But it was still endless. I don't miss those.
Yeah. I like my weekends now. I get to
Hi, my name is Josiah Keim from Florida Gulf Coast University. And my question was, I'm a senior in my undergrad, and I have a desire to get a master's or PhD, but I have a concern that I might want to spend some time in industry to either hammer out what I might be interested in, or to just gain an experience that I may miss by going directly into a PhD or MS program. And I wonder if you could offer your opinions on the subject.
I definitely think it's a good idea to go into industry if you're not really sure where you want to, focus your skill set. But yeah, if you want to go out and get a few jobs, do an internship or something, and maybe get some experience in that, because definitely down the line that will, save you a lot of heartache when you're, third-year master's student or something, and you don't have the experience that, someone who's been in this industry for those last 3 years will make up for once you get out. So
I think that's a very difficult question. It's finding a right spot. I think it's a difficult one. Maybe you want to kind of go back and do a PhD, and you think maybe a couple of years in industry and getting experience will make you more appealing, so maybe you can kind of have a better option of what schools you apply and get in, and have a better background to kind of focus onto your area. But then maybe your life kind of gets in between, and you don't want to then go back to school for undetermined amount of years, especially if you have a job that you're happy with, or a life that you're happy with. So finding that sweet spot, yeah. For me, I think it was easy. I worked a couple of years, but it was in a startup that failed, and then it was a good spot to kind of decide. I thought of going back to actually do some of that work, which I didn't end up doing, but it's a hard question. I mean, I don't know where the sweet spot, the golden spot is.
So I would say there's not necessarily a right or wrong. Like find something that works. For me, I did a couple internships as an undergrad for summers, and they were very impactful for me. They showed me what I really liked, what really excited me, and they also showed me something that I liked my weekends, and I liked being able to not have homework all the time. So for me, I made, and then I also saw a huge skill gap between if I wanted to do this fluid dynamics type stuff and what my skill set was now and what it needed to be to make a career in it. So I was like, all right, let's double down, let's get to grad school, and let's get it done now. I'm not gonna wait and just did it all at once, because I knew if I waited, I wouldn't go back, because I would have enjoyed life outside of school.
And to kind of follow up with that, you also don't, once you finish with your PhD, you're like, you have a handicap because you don't have 4 or 5 years of work experience that if you didn't go to grad school. So you're not, I mean, you think that it will pay off on the long run, but I don't know if that's true or not.
It's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
Like I would say, a PhD is not a guarantee to this, dream job, dream career. Like you can have. I know people in BD that do not have a PhD and enjoy their job, do technical work, and are very successful at it.
And if you can always ask your potential graduate advisor up front before you join the lab, how do you feel about me doing an internship in the middle of my master's, middle of my PhD? Is that something you support? And having an advisor that supports it probably is the most important thing. Because if they don't support it, they're either not going to let you go, or the whole time you're at your internship, you're going to be feeling guilty. So I was fortunate to have an advisor that pushed me out for a summer, said, get out of here for 3 months, go see what industry is like, and then come back and you'll finish your last year, and you can decide what kind of track you want to take.
Cool. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dieter Ruhl. I'm a postdoc in the University of Minnesota. So Nate mentioned about career options for PhDs in pharmaceuticals industry for sales positions and stuff like that. So I was wondering, as a PhD, our most of the trainings are in research and generating data or doing research basically. So how do you acquire the skill set for doing the sales job? Are there options for on-job training for that? And what is the natural progression for those kind of sales positions in terms of career path? And can you switch back to R&D at some point as well?
Well, in pharmaceutics, I think that a lot of the salespeople I see actually were with the same company, only in R&D or another field, and they hated it. It was like graduate school all over for them. They didn't want to be in the lab, so they understood and they transitioned to a sales role. The other option is, if you're in a PhD or a graduate program and you consider yourself to be pretty scrappy, you could go out and learn essentially anything if given the time and the proper direction. You may be able to land yourself a sales role right out of school. It's possible. You don't want to limit yourself. So if you feel confident that you can learn very quickly and speak the language and at least understand the technologies of the companies you're trying to apply for, a sales role right out of school isn't out of the question. You guys have anything to add to that?
For device sales, they'll ask you questions about strategies or whatnot. So I would say if you have the option to take a couple courses in the business school or to audit a couple, I can see what they have to offer. Sometimes they'll have like a medical device management or something like that course. You might want to consider just sitting in or meeting with the professor to get their notes or something like that if you're not looking to take another class. Other things I would say would be like start just practicing talking to people a lot as well, about either your research and trying to make your research fun and exciting for other people to be interested in, like just over casual conversation.
And to follow up with a question, you think, because you mentioned also the possibility of reverting back to research, which was the first part of the question, research in industry or in academia?
In industry.
Oh, in industry. I do not have the experience to answer that, but I do not know. Nate, what do you think?
Yeah, if you've been away from research for a while, I think it's difficult to get back. If it's a matter of a year, probably not a big deal. If you've been in sales away from research for a decade or so, you just want to make sure that the opportunities you target, you're up to date on what's been happening in research when you've been away from it, essentially. And then after that, it's just finding the right opportunities and the people that will bring you in and allow you to come back to research after being away for so long.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alexis, and I'm a junior, and I also go to Mercer University, so go Bears. My biggest question is, what was the most difficult part, or the best part, I guess, both sides, of going from the classroom to the real world?
I always joke, but about missing nap time. Because of the breakup of days, it's when you're in school, you got maybe 4 or 6 hours of class time, and there's a break in between. You can go do whatever you want. But in the real world, you have to be accountable. You have to be there at a certain time. You have to be there for your teammates throughout the entire day. So that's definitely something that I found was kind of hard, a little childish. But yeah, go ahead.
Sure how to answer that. The first thing that pops in my mind, I miss a lot in the classroom the structure curriculum. I really enjoy that. I like learning in a very structured manner with a syllabus, and I enjoy that. And I mean, I still learn and I do read, but it's a little more, the structure takes place more into the goals and your schedule, but not in your learning process. And you kind of have to self-impose that structure when you're trying to learn. And like this week, I try to dedicate every Friday to still reading papers, to kind of still maintain that. It's not as structured as a classroom with a professor that has a syllabus. So I do miss that personally.
Yeah, I would echo that, where I still learn and I still have to pull out my textbooks to do the work that I do, like oftentimes, but I direct that. Like a professor's not in the classroom deriving equations on the board. Quite often what ends up happening is I'm the one self-deriving equations on my own. And I would say that it's possible for, I do believe that you can do that as an engineer. You might not see that now, but I believe you guys are able to do that. Like, it's okay to have some hesitation over your skills, but you have an amazing toolbox, and you can, with the classes that you've taken and with the experiences you have, and you can apply them to your job.
Yeah.
I'd also like to mention the fact that once I graduated, I realized that my entire network was gone. That the people that I saw every day, they all moved in their separate directions. And so moving into, Indianapolis area, I realized I didn't know very many people, and therefore I couldn't, looking for a job, it's kind of hard when you don't know a lot of people to, like I said before, hand out that resume and get well known. You're just, like in my case, I was just somebody who just graduated with their bachelor's trying to make it in the real world, and it was difficult, and I really missed that kind of tight-knit community that I had with my undergraduate courses and classes, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's
a good point.
Yes, it's a great point we both forgot.
Thank you.
No, thanks.
Thank you for your time first. My name is Ryan Bridges from ASU. So my question is, we know many of these large companies. How do you find out about the small ones in your experience?
So for me, there's the state of North Carolina and Raleigh has a couple of biotechnology centers in different cities, and they keep listings of smaller companies that are in the area that do medical technology related work. So that was, for me, when I was looking, that I would pull those resources that were available within your state sometimes of what local companies are there. Other options that Nate mentioned are consulting firms. If you can find like some of the consultants who work on medical technology stuff, they have a vast network, both large companies and small companies. And so that would be a resource I would look into. Audrey, I think you should. How did you find PMC Smart Solution?
Well, I found it on Rose Holman's career page, but a lot of these smaller companies that I know of now actually are because they're our customers. So just like I said, just growing your network, you're going to find some of the students that you went to class with. In a couple of years, you reach out to them and be like, where do they work now? You look on their LinkedIn page, be like, I've never heard of that place. And then you just go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. I was working on coatings for stents, and then, okay, what companies manufacture stents? So it's like you find it online and go that, and it's like, do I have any contacts there? Do I know anyone that knows anyone there? If not, still give it a shot. You never know.
I would say a lot of times the bigger companies buy products from smaller companies. So if you have a connection or an alumnus that works for a big company, you can ask them, hey, does your company buy stuff from smaller companies? And if, like, so for instance, there's a company in North Carolina called Polyzen, and they're really small. They do a lot of contract manufacturing, and they make the angioplasty balloons for a lot of catheters. And so like companies like J&J or Medtronic or Ethicon, like they'll buy those little balloons, just the little balloon from Polyzen. So
yeah, you can look around your lab, the pipettes that you're using, the tools, like ask yourself, where did these things come from? The polymers that you're using, the solvents, and they'll all trickle down to usually smaller companies that drive your own research from day to day.
Thank you.
We're going to take just these two questions, and then I think we're out of time, but you're more than welcome to come see our speakers face to face.
Career Zone told us to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Career Center.
Yeah, hi. I have a question that's a bit similar to what was asked before, and it's about moving. How open are companies to people who don't have enough experience for consulting but are not able to move where the jobs are? So are you open to have remote members in your teams, or is the only chance I have to start my own company?
So I can answer that with, I guess, a story. So we had a consulting partner with us that we worked with a particular individual at that firm for a while, and we really liked him. He was awesome. And then we had a job opening that we were having a lot of difficulty finding the right candidate for. And he kind of, that individual from the consulting agency called my manager up and said, hey, I would love to apply, but I can't move until 18 months. My wife's finishing up vet school, and she really needs to finish up vet school before I move. Can we work something out? And we said, yeah, we can work something out, because we had a prior history with him. And so I would say that it is possible, but you'll need to try to cultivate that relationship somehow to show that company or that group that you're worth letting, like that your skills and your contributions are going to be worth them letting you work remotely, and making sure that you working remotely won't hinder your contributions or sense of belonging to the team as well. That's also a challenge of working remotely sometimes, is there is a disconnect. Sometimes you might not get the same people-to-people interaction that you would get if you worked in the office with people.
I also know that there's a website, I can't remember the exact name, some vocations. You can go on there and it will list out a number of positions. There are a lot of field tech jobs, but that you can find that are for remote people, like what you're asking. There are actually jobs listed for people who would be working from one spot in a different location from where they're actually situated. So there's something like that maybe.
What's that website you're?
I'll have to check my phone. I'm sorry if you want to come find me later. It's something vocations. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm not sure how to answer that. I think in my particular case, there was a kind of a deadline. Again, going back to what Chris mentioned earlier, you're kind of dispensable. So give you 3 months a maximum to kind of move, and even less to accept or decline an offer. In my case, I think in other circumstances, if you're, I guess it depends all on the position, the conditions. If it's like a particular unique candidate, then possibly they would be open to wait up to 18 months. But I think it's rare.
Yeah, and he was working like as a part of our group, and we would fly him down from time to time to interact with us. But yeah, I would say that's not the story that's always told. The norm that we have is that you get hired and you move to our site. So.
And I also feel it also depends if you're maybe doing some modeling type of work, is a little more flexible to do it remotely, when if you're maybe doing wet chemistry, you
might need a new hood.
Yeah, right. Something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Kiara. So a lot of times you hear about companies that will pay for their employees to go back and do their master's or something, and I was wondering if you could give insight to how that process works and what a company might be evaluating for whether it's worth it to send their employee back to grad school.
So I'll give you 2 examples of this one. So Applied Research Associates, my first company, and this is not a slam on them, this is just something they say on their website. They will not pay for a master's in business administration. They'll only pay for a master's in engineering or a PhD in engineering. And you have to score B or better on all your courses for you to get reimbursed. So the way that, that's ARA's policy, and they'll say that you can look it up on their website and it'll say the same thing. So for the way that BD works is they'll pay for, you'll need to clear it with your manager, and you'll need to decide what flexibility is needed and whether your manager will buy into that. If you're going back, that's going to require 3-hour, 4-hour labs in the middle of the day, that's a bit more tricky to navigate. But it can be done, per se. And BD will pay. Normally the way that it works at both ARA and BD is that you first clear with your manager. There's normally some type of department that you'll have to kind of contact and work through, and then you'll pay for the course up front. or courses, however many you want to take. You'll ensure your manager will probably tell you, by the way, your job responsibilities cannot slip. So be prepared for that talk as well. And then you'll also then, once you find your scores at the end of the semester or whatnot, you'll scan it, submit it, and then get reimbursed for those costs.
I think, again, it depends on, those are two different examples. I have a friend, and in some companies, there's maybe an internal selection process, and maybe they choose 2 to 3 candidates per year to kind of send off and cover maybe a master's or MBA or something like that. In other situations, like a Cook Medical, they give partial reimbursement, not entire, but everybody can apply for it.
Yeah, the same with what Alex said. Basically, just, you have to be up front if, in the interview process, ask maybe, I guess I don't really know if that's appropriate, but...
Normally, if the companies are going to do it, they normally have a pretty structured process. And so you can, and if it's a goal that you have, then yeah, ask up front. But if it's something you just want to have in the back of your mind, you can kind of search through the company's document or web pages a little bit after you get there. Most companies have an intranet. Well, I don't know if we didn't mention that, which are websites that are only available to you as employees of the company. And there's a lot more information about the company in the intranet web pages than what you can find on www.bd.com.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming today, everyone. Appreciate it. Let's give our speakers a round of applause.